channel. This is Ellie.
Ange.
And today we're going to be talking about books we binged, in case you're having trouble trying to find a book to read for this Christmas, or you want a little bit of inspiration. This is kind of geared toward English lit students, but students of all kinds. These are just good books that will grip you and change your life. You can't yawn in a video. Okay, so let's begin. The first one on our list is Captain Corelli's Mandolin. Why don't you tell us about when you read Captain Corelli's Mandolin and why you liked it? And it's by Louis de Bernier.
I read Captain Corelli's Mandolin.
Why are you laughing?
I'm a little bit shy. I read Captain Corelli's Mandolin a long time ago, probably 20 odd years ago, well before Ellie was born anyway. I loved it from the second I started reading it. It does take a couple of chapters to get into it. Probably 3 or 4 actually. It's a bit heavy.
More like half
Yeah.
half the book is very like descriptive, and it
is
switches between characters a lot,
Yeah.
and like settings, and it takes a long time setting the scene.
Yeah, but I will have to say that once you're there, you will never ever forget this book.
No.
It is an amazing book, and as I say, we binged this book, but took a few days to get into the first part, but once you're in, that's it.
It's like, yeah.
Bam.
Yeah.
You've read it all within like 3 hours.
Yeah, it's a love story set in World War II on a Grecian island, and the Italians come and invade their island, and the main character meets this soldier who plays a mandolin.
Oh, he's so handsome.
Although the mandolin doesn't come in for quite a while, even once they've met him. And yeah, he's just adorable. And I remember when I read the book, which was a couple of years ago now, I just loved him.
Yeah.
I just wanted to love him.
Yeah. I still love him all these years later. And it was thrilling to watch Ellie reading it and reaching all the points, the such important points. And I knew when she'd hit the point. There's like the moment. It's like it's a book that makes you cry. It's a very intense book. Unbelievable.
Like the language is intense, like the description, like the imagery is very beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the next one I've got on our list is Gone with the Wind. This one is one that I read earlier this year. It's like an 1,000-page book, and I read it in a week because I just did not stop reading it for an entire week. I think this is probably my top book. Captain Corelli is close, but Gone with the Wind really took me. Again, another love story, and Scarlett as a main character. I just thought she was so interesting because she's so strong and she's so fierce, and yet you really see the way her brain works. I liked her a lot. That's probably why I liked the book. Why did you like it?
I can remember again reading this when I was a teenager, similar sort of age to Ellie. I probably was. I can hardly remember it now, but I can just remember it being one of those books that you couldn't put down. I just loved it. It goes on and on and on, and it's just amazing. Lovely book.
It sort of takes over your life. Yeah. In comparison to Captain Corelli, the language is a lot easier.
It's very simply written.
Yeah.
It's a great book.
Again,
great story.
Not badly written. Like it's not. You wouldn't go, oh, this is trash. It's not like that, but it's easy to read, and it's easy to suddenly, like, you're instantly there, if you know what I mean. Like, you're not here anymore. You're instantly, like, in that world. The next one on our list is Memoirs of a Geisha, which is one that I introduced Mummy to for once.
Yeah. I'm still reading it. I've got the very last chapter or 2 to read. But this book, again, very descriptive, and it is so enjoyable to hear about this girl's life.
Yeah, it's very much like the entire life of this geisha, and how she becomes a geisha, and it's just a really interesting story. For me, it took me a little while to get into it. Well, I wouldn't say that. I just didn't.
No, it didn't me. I just.
It's not like it. Just on a personal level, it took me quite a while to get into it. Like I read a couple of chapters, really liked it, but just didn't properly read it until one night where I read from like before halfway to the very end. I just spent the entire afternoon and evening reading it and just didn't stop. Like, I didn't have dinner, I just kept reading. So it really, really got me. It was one of those that gripped me.
We were saying earlier about how the kimonos, you just get visions of them in your head. They were just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's very detailed. It's not just like, oh, the kimonos were pretty. Like, you understand the kimonos are worn by which geishas, and like the rich history of that tradition is like...
And when they wore them, they wore special ones at a certain time of the year.
Exactly.
And all the palaver of getting dressed into this kimono.
And you're just like thrown really into this life. It's not like a brief scattering of like events. It's really day to day, but it's also very exciting. There's a lot of really exciting stuff that happens to the main character, and it's just so different to any other book that I'd read before, I think.
What I find is every time I get it out of my bag, wherever I am, someone says, "Gosh, that's a good book." It's like everybody's read it.
I had that with Gone with the Wind, actually. I remember I was reading it in my room at Culford, and my house mistress came in, and she just said, "Oh, God, that's a good book." And she just goes, "Oh," and I'm like, "I know, right?"
It's funny how books bring people together. Okay, next one.
Next one's a bit different. This one is Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which you read first.
I read this when it first came out. I think my father actually introduced me to it. He'd read it and gave it to me after he'd finished reading it. And again, quite a complex story, but well written. And again, the story, you can't put the damn thing down. You just got to keep reading it and find out what's happening next and next and next. And then you read the next book, and I don't think Ellie's got that far, but I had to read the next book.
No, I haven't read the other books.
I just couldn't stop reading it. It's just fabulous.
I read this.
Nice story, good story. Not a nice story.
I read it earlier this year, but I remember when you read it for the first time. I can remember I was sitting in the car. I must have been really little. I remember you reading it. I remember picking it up on the back seat and trying to like read the first page, but I couldn't understand any of the names.
Yeah,
so the names are so like it's like... Where's it from?
Is it written from a Norwegian writer? Norway?
Scandinavian.
I've even forgotten his name, but wow, how can you forget his name?
Stieg Larsson.
Oh, yeah, Stieg Larsson, good book.
And
don't watch the film, read the book first.
Yeah, so I like read the names, but I remember I really wanted to read it even then, but I was just way, way, way too young for it.
It's not a book for a 10-year-old.
And I actually got it. I got it out of the Culford Library, and my librarian was like, "Oh, just be warned, it's pretty intense."
Yeah, there are.
And it is quite intense. Yeah. So that's not one for the younger of you. Like there's some really quite graphic scenes in there. Yeah. But quite exciting. Like, it's also a good one for girl power, I think. Okay, the next one is to you. We've got a couple that each of us have read here.
To be honest, this one I read years and years and years ago. It's called Cain and Abel. I'm sure most of you have heard of it, by Jeffrey Archer. It's not a classic book, but it's one of those books that... it's a great story. Do you know what? I can hardly even remember what the story's about now. It's about two brothers, I would assume.
But you remember it being an important
even now I say to Ellie, you must read that book. You must
even though you don't know what.
Yeah, I can't remember even hardly. Oh, it was great, and I think it goes through the life of one of them or parts of his life, and then it turns to the other brother and does his bit, and then so on and so forth all the way through the book, and and then finally, I can't really say much about it today. And now I'm talking about it, it's coming back to me.
Oh, right.
But, great. And one to be picked up, a very quick read. I think it's very long. It's like big chunker, but one of those books that you read very quickly, because again, it's... what did we say about the one earlier? It's not badly written book. It's a good, well written book, but
it's not complicated.
It's not complicated.
So you feel quite present.
Yeah, that's right. You can go with it without having to think too hard about anything. You know.
The next one's mine. Atonement. I remember I tried to read Atonement when I was much younger, and I think I was too young for it, and I couldn't read it. I couldn't get into it at all. But then I got assigned it for my A-levels. We did it as a coursework book, and I read it in a full day. I got it out of the library and didn't stop reading it all day. I feel like I can't really talk about it because I talked about Atonement so much for my A-levels that it feels weird to try and summarise it when I had to do it in so much detail. But basically, it's about this little girl and her family, and something goes wrong. And basically, there's lots of, you're trying to work out who did it, but I can't remember what they did. Oh, it's gone so quick. Something happened to one of the girls. I do actually remember what now, but I can't really say because it's quite important. So, like, something happens to one of the girls, and they're trying to work out who did it, and the main girl tells an important lie. Bryony, I think that's right. Bryony tells a lie which changes the life of someone. She blames someone, for this thing that happened that they didn't actually do, and she knows that, and she ruins their life, and it's kind of like watching her go through it, and then in the end there's like a huge twist, and you're like, what? And it's very metafictional, and you're like, I'm so confused, like that blew our brains in class. And for that, this story is just so worth reading, because just that mind-blowing bit.
So do you think that should be my next one, because I've not actually read it?
Yeah, you should read Atonement. So the next one's one we both read. This is the Da Vinci Code. I read the Da Vinci Code when I was reading a lot of really complicated books at that time, so it was a breeze, but
yeah
but like, it's still quite a respected book.
Again, I read this when it first came out a good while ago now, but again, I convinced Ellie to read it. It was one of those reads you don't forget in a hurry.
I've now read Angels and Demons, which I think was written before the Da Vinci Code, but was much less famous. And the thing about these books that I find is that the characters and the plot lines are really, really simple and predictable, kind of. Like, they follow the same patterns as a lot of other sort of, they're not even crime books, kind of. They're like detective-y, kind of, but they're not like, it's like this really, it's like this intellectual guy, and it's the intellectual stuff which really brings these books up, like the detail of the history and the religious research that's gone into them is what makes them so amazing, because it takes like that really quite generic plot line and these really flat characters and just makes it brilliant.
Yeah, it's different. It's very different to a lot of the books I'd ever read. It had a very different sort of feel about it. The complicated, not scientific stuff. What did you just call it? Religiousy sort of stuff.
Historic.
It's not something. Yeah, it's not something you read about every day. It was all very new to me, and it brought things to my mind that you'd probably never have thought of.
Like the Illuminati and the Mason brothers, like those, there's a lot about those kind of conspiracy theories, and not just like Shane Dawson level conspiracy, but like really researched historic, like a lot of research into the history of
going on for
like thousands,
thousands of years,
and you really believe it. Like, at the end of it, you're like, this exists. The next one is the River God series by Wilbur Smith.
Yeah, I think this should be my chat, because these books are amazing. Wilbur Smith, I was introduced to again by my father when I was a teenager. I've been trying to introduce them to Ellie since she was like 3.
And I couldn't quite handle them then.
No. I grew up with Wilbur Smith, and he's an author from the 70s onwards. He's written lots and lots and lots of books.
What are they about?
Spectacular. They're about Egypt, and a guy called
Ancient Egypt,
and a guy called Tahita. He's a eunuch. You'll find that out quite quickly when you read the book.
Yeah.
And he looks after.
Yeah, he kind of serves these like.
They're like the
royalty.
the pharaoh type guys, and they're kids.
And he's involved in all the secrets, and he kind of grows up with them, and it's lovely. And he's very vain, and he's really quite a funny narrator.
Yeah, the books are sort of about him, aren't they?
Yeah, they're sort of about him, but they're sort of not. They're sort of just about Egypt, and they're not necessarily like he's just a part of this really big story. Yeah. But he's so amazing. Like, he's really talented in all these different ways, and really, like, this whole kingdom is resting on him.
Yeah, that's what he makes you believe anyway.
Yeah, true.
And, but it's about the prince and princesses and you know, all that type of stuff. It's great. I think one of the books comes back to modern day, where an adventurer goes after the seven scrolls, which Tahita wrote, I believe, if I remember rightly. Yeah, fabulous. That was just as good. That was just as good. Yeah, I love.
I'm yet to read that one, but I'm sure I will.
Yeah, very good books.
So the next one's one of mine again, and this is It by Stephen King. I read a lot of Stephen King a couple of years ago, but It is a good one. Again, it's a really long one. It's quite a chunky one. But I'd seen the film, so that's why I was through this one. But I know that it's one that I read really quickly and really I got really immersed in. It's very different to any other book I'd read before. I really enjoyed reading horror books when I was growing up. I remember I read this series about it's like these dolls or something. Oh god, that was creepy. And it was like the soul of this monster got released and it was possessing all the girls, and they were in like cult, and I really liked those kind of books. But Stephen King was my first like adult horror, I guess. And
I think I told you to read Carrie, didn't I?
Yeah, I think Carrie was first before. Yeah,
that was one of my when I was a teenager, I read Carrie, and it was great book. Great book, but they're quite scary, aren't they?
They are scary. They're not even like the films make them out to be like, the films are really jump scare. That's what's really scary about the films. But I think the books are really different. The books are really psychological. What's scary isn't necessarily the clown. It's like the bullies and like all their other, like the other scary bits about their lives, like that really gets in your head. The last one we have is very different to all the other books we've mentioned.
Very different. Ooh.
Yeah.
This is a bit more of your trashy sort of book. Yeah. This is like off the shelf at Sainsbury's jobby, you know, you didn't have to think about it too hard. But grab it and read it, and oh my god. But
it was my first adult book, I think. I mean, I read a couple of adult books growing up, I guess, but this was my first this was the book which transitioned me from reading YA all the time to reading adult books all the time, so I think it's worth mentioning because I did really, really enjoy it, and that's Eeny Meeny.
But yeah, I bought it just for a quick read off the shelf at Sainsbury's, and
I've not got a clue what it's about. It's about, I think it was a female police and
detective. I think a lot of her books have been about her since, but the story was about, I don't think I can say, can I?
Yeah, don't give away the ending.
No, it was about this criminal murderer type, kidnapped two people initially, put them in a pit, and gave them a gun and said, shoot the other person and you live. And then left them to it.
Right. Oh yeah, I remember that now. Yeah. And it kept happening.
And he kept doing it, and it's interesting. It's sort of, again, quite psychological. What would you do in that situation? Would you be able to kill the other person, or would you be killed, basically?
Yeah, because those are your two options.
Yeah, they're your two, or you sit and die of starvation. What do you do, you know?
Would you just shoot each other at the same time?
Yeah, or would you just
try
make a pact and die, you know? Yeah. It was, from that point of view, it was quite interesting. I think the initial first few chapters were the most exciting.
Yeah, probably.
But you had to get to the end of it.
Yeah.
It was one of those books that you did have to read.
And I remember when I first started reading adult books, I read lots of this kind of book. I read some really quite dark books.
Yeah, I got quite addicted to them at one stage, didn't I?
I remember I read one about that might have been the same book as the Preserving Bodies book. She's like running away from a hidden past.
Could have. Yeah, I think it is the same.
And she's like got a secret identity. Yeah. And I just remembered the ending, and the ending was really good. I was like, whoa, I did not see that coming.
Up the Stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've read. They're all quite trashy books, but they have a place, and for a quick.
And if there's something, if like you're in a reading rut, those kind of books can get you out of it and make you fall in love with reading again.
Yeah, you don't have to think very hard about it all. It does all the thinking for you, and away you go.
So those are our 10 books that we binged. And our top 10 favourite books as well.
Yeah, we've got lots of others that we could tell you.
We've got lots of others, and I'm thinking about making this a little series. I think that our next one we should do is our top 10 TV shows that we've binged.
Oh!
So
yeah, I think we should. We do a lot of that.
We do. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, because not enough of you do that. And like this video, leave a comment, and I will see you next time.
Bye.
Good.